yes when you really wanted to say no, you're not showing up authentically. You're showing up out of obligation. And when you show up out of obligation, all you're doing is burning yourself out. And then what ends up happening is you start feeling resentment toward the other person because they should have just known. They shouldn't have asked. But no, did you vocalize that?
Welcome to the Women Who Lead Summit. Are you ready to get inspired, empowered, and elevated? These powerhouse women are bringing their wisdom, their stories, and their game-changing strategies just for you. So if you're ready to level up, I know I am. This is the Women Who Lead Summit. Let's do this. I have this amazing woman whom I love and I respect, and it's my privilege to introduce her to you. And she is truly a compassionate and transformative leader. Her name is Bernadette Josephs, and Bernadette is a faith-driven coach with a mission to help Christian women break free from the scars of rejection and fully embrace their God-given worth with confidence. Now, through her Impactful coaching program and workshops, Bernadette empowers women to dismantle self-protective behaviors like people-pleasing and the fear of rejection, and then replace those with the beliefs rooted in God's truth. You know, we're all about that around here, okay? So with her personal experience and deep understanding of biblical principles, Bernadette has a passion for guiding women towards healing, authenticity, and lasting transformation. Now, her work equips women to rediscover their identity in Christ, set healthy boundaries, and boldly pursue their dreams. So if you're ready to step into your God-given purpose and embrace your life where you were created to live, you are in the right freaking place, right? Because when somebody is going to share with you how to break free from all of the stuff that the world tells you, but tells you the truth about what God tells you, this is where you need to be. So join me in welcoming the incredible Bernadette Josephs to the Women Who Lead Summit. Welcome. How are you?
I'm actually really good. I'm excited to be here. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on here and just really talk about something that is so near and dear to my heart. I'm thankful for the space that you give us to do this in, and I'm just grateful to work alongside of you. So I'm excited to be here. Excited is like one of my top words that I'm always saying. So I'm just
Right.
excited. I'm excited. That's all I got.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Now, so here it is. The first thing I want to do, Bernadette, is I love what you talk about. And you know, I adore you and what you put out in the world and how you're helping people with rejection. And you have a lot of like, you know, experience in this in work and in life and all that great stuff. And one of the things is a lot of women, I mean, and I speak to a lot of women, and we struggle a lot with people pleasing. Right. And so we think that we have to please everyone to our own demise. We usually do it until we can't do it anymore, and then we're burnt out and having like these breakdowns, right? Because we don't want to feel rejection. Nobody wants to feel like, oh, they don't like me, they don't want to work with me, they don't, all those things, right? So what I want you to help us with, or to start off with, is what steps do you recommend for us to start to dismantle, right, all of these self-protective behaviors that we have, because we don't, you know, we don't know how to stop people pleasing, and we're afraid of rejection. Can you help us with that?
Absolutely. I actually like this question. My favorite part of your question is, where do we start? I think that's key in terms of like, how do we start unmantling the people pleasing, this fear of rejection? A lot of times, especially now in the society that we live in, we know psychological terms. Everybody knows what people pleasing is. Everybody knows what it looks like. And a lot of times we want to aim towards behavior modification. Oh, I just need to stop doing this. I need to stop doing that. But what ends up happening is that when you find yourself in situations where maybe you're uncomfortable in a relationship dynamic, when without realization, without awareness, you end up reverting back to old behaviors. And then that's when we start beating ourselves up. Oh, what's wrong with me? I couldn't get it together. I'm repeating the same thing that I don't want to do, right? People pleasing essentially means that I'm putting somebody else ahead of my own needs. I'm putting myself to the side to care for somebody else's emotions, their feelings, all that stuff, and really putting ourselves to the side. And what ends up happening, like you said, is that we do it so much, we end up being burned out. And so we have to start with, where do we start? And for me, one of the things that I talk a lot about with the women that I work with in my 9 to 5, where I work with a lot of caregiving women in my therapy practice and even in my coaching practice, we start with awareness. we have to know what is at the root of the behavior of what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I think it's really important because scripture even speaks to my favoriteest verse in the whole wide world. I know favoriteest is not a word, but my favoriteest verse in the whole wide world is Romans 12:2, because it says, do not be conformed to the patterns of this world, but be renewed by the transformation of your mind. And when we think about what our mind is the part of us that allows us to think, to feel, to perceive, to remember, to reason, right? It's how we experience the world. And so if our mind is like overshadowed with these negative thoughts about ourselves, these negative beliefs that we might have received from either our experiences or from other people, that's going to have an impact on our behaviors. So I want to go back and maybe talk a little bit about core beliefs, because that's where the awareness starts. We have to know what the core beliefs are within ourselves so that way we know how to start changing some of these behaviors. And for me, when I think about core beliefs, they're basically the central idea that we have about ourselves, about others, about the world, and especially as Christian women, about God. And what we don't realize is that a lot of these core beliefs become the lens through which we see every situation that's in front of us. Now, how do these core beliefs start? Many times they start because somebody overtly told you something, a lie about yourself. You're not smart enough. You're not good enough. Something is wrong with you. They use those words, but also too, some of those core beliefs really come from experiences we might have had. One of the examples I use is if you were a child and you had, like, let's say you were doing a school play and you're really excited about this school play, you got the best part, you're really excited to show off your skills and you want one of your parents to show up and really support you in that moment, yet they don't show up. And let's say the school play is something that happens 2 or 3 times a week to allow different audiences to come, and every single time your parent doesn't show up. So because of that experience, what you internalize with that is, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not good enough for somebody to show up for me. And so when those things start becoming our core beliefs, whether we realize it or not, it affects the way that we think, it affects the way that we feel, and ultimately it affects the way that we behave. And so people pleasing really stems from a very deep core belief that either I'm not good enough, something's wrong with me, I'm unlovable. And what we do around that is just really behave in ways to kind of control and get other people to love us and pay attention to us. But still, it's not feeding us because we're just behaving based off of this lie that we believe about ourselves. So I think for me, the first step is always awareness. What is at the root? We have to recognize what is at the root of the behavior in order to be able to start shifting how we're behaving and what we're doing differently.
That is so good because when I was growing up, as you were talking about that, and like what's the core belief, and what took me so long to get to where I am, in my journey, right? And it reminded me of when I was in school. I think it was like in fourth grade or fifth grade, something like that. There was like this big event that happened, and I won the top prize of all of everybody there, which was best storyteller of the school or whatever, right?
Amazing.
And but my parents didn't show up,
Mm,
right? So I felt so belittled because when I got off the stage, I remember all the other parents going, "Oh my gosh, congratulations, that's amazing," all this other stuff. Like, "Where's your mom? We got to tell her how amazing you are." My mom was not there, nowhere to be had, right? My father was never really in my life, so that was just a given. But the whole point was, I know what you're talking about. I felt so defeated, and I felt like I was not loved, I was not cared for, I, wasn't supported, and I wasn't because my mother was actually not a very good mother. But the whole point is that did help me develop people pleasing skills throughout my life, where for a long time it was like, "Oh, can you do this for me? Yes. Can you do that for me? Yes, yes, yes." Everything was yes, 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 to my own detriment because I was exhausted, I was tired, I was angry, I was all of those things. But you're right, getting down to the root is going to be critical, critical, right? But a lot of us struggle with what is the root. And do I even want to freaking go there, Bernadette?
yeah,
Right? Like, do I
no,
even
trust
want to
me.
go there?
Nobody wants to go there because it's not comfortable, right? What ends up happening is that when we start going to the root, we have to face realities of what we experience. And what ends up happening is that, let's be real about it, now we have to look at emotions that we want to run away from. So a lot of times, for myself, definitely a recovering people pleaser. I was so quick to like, even with my children, it was like, if you want this, that, and the third, I would go out of my way to give it to them because I couldn't tolerate the anxiety of them
Mm,
being disappointed in me. Right.
right,
Or
right,
at work, if my boss said, hey, I need you to do, this new project, but I'm inundated with all these other things, I couldn't tolerate the anxiety of the other person being upset with me or disappointed with me, or even coming off as like, hey, I'm not good enough to do this. And so it really required for me to go into that route, which meant having to revisit those past experiences where I felt that anxiety and do what we call like an emotional recorrective experience, right? Look at it
mm-hmm,
from a different angle. Was it really, thinking back to even my own childhood, it was like if I didn't get straight A's, I wasn't validated. So it felt almost as if my whole entire existence was based on how well I performed at school, how well I performed at church, how well I performed in front of my, family, friends, and stuff like that. Because what did that mean? That meant I was a good enough daughter. But if I did anything less than that, or if I was just human and had a bad day, then immediately I was a bad daughter. And so I had to like really revisit some of those stories in my life to recorrect it and say, no, I was just a child doing what children do.
right, right.
And my mother, I love her. She and I have an amazing relationship now. But and she's given me total permission to say, hey, if you need to share something so it helps somebody else, you got my permission. But
That's
she
good.
was also limited in her own stuff. And so part of going to the root is also recognizing that other people are human. Other people also have limitations. And so that's really going to impact how maybe you feel about yourself, but their beliefs are not who you are. And I think that's
Right.
what we go back to, that awareness is, where do we separate the belief that somebody put on you versus the belief that who you are? And that's where we want to align who you are up against the word of God, because his word is truth. His word
Mm-hmm.
is objective. His word is truth. And when we can align our identity up against his word, then it helps us to slowly peel away from those people pleasing behaviors.
That's really true. I think as I have grown in my faith and in my walk, and realize who God is in my life, it has really helped me to have an identity shift, right? And it's not let me lean on what people think of me, but more of what God thinks of me. So lead us through that. Like, how can Christian women, women of faith, right, rediscover their identity in Christ to use this foundation to build confidence in their daily lives and pursuits? Because I think that's important and vital to who we are as women and growing in, knowing our worth and value.
Yeah. So confidence only grows when we act in faith. And I think that's the hard part. That's a hard pill to swallow, because a lot of times we think, oh, I could just magically make myself confident. And the reality is that's not true. I heard this saying once: we're hurt in relationships, but we heal in relationships. And
Mm,
so what's hard about when we have these limited beliefs that hold us back, to say, I'm not worthy of love, I don't belong, I don't fit in, the only way to really heal that and build confidence is really to put yourself in positions where possibly rejection is possible, right? And push yourself past your comfort zone, push yourself past, this little bubble of this is where I belong outside of the group, in order to slowly build up that confidence. Because again, we have to act in faith. We have to take that step forward, even when we feel unworthy or unsure, and just really trust that God is going to be with us in the outcome. And it really does require, for me, I think this is going past it. Once we're aware and we have that transformation is starting to develop, part of that is shifting our perspective. I always tell a lot of my clients, we can't change your circumstance. Your parents may never accept this new version of you who's coming up in Christ. Your siblings may write you off because now you're speaking truths about the family, right? That may happen, and you may not be able to change them. You won't be, we can't, they are their own people and they're going to do what they do. But what we need to do is really shift our perspective and shift what we're looking at in terms of, but what are we stepping into? What is Christ calling us into? And on top of that, really, one of the things that worked best for me, and this was really, really hard, was getting into Bible study groups. That is what really helped me to build my confidence, because I had to put myself out there and be in the space of other women, risk rejection, and walk in there confidently knowing like, okay, even if this doesn't work out, just because, whatever situation might happen, it doesn't take away from who I am in Christ. And so when I was able to do that little by little with practice and over time, it became a thing where now it's like I walk into a Bible study group and I'm like, okay, who's going to be my new friend? Who's going to be the new person that I meet, and we're going to hook up and go to lunch or something, right? But it did definitely take time, and it's a not an overnight thing. It's a small progression, but it is taking those steps, even when you feel unsure and even when you feel unworthy.
Yeah, I think the small step thing is something that we all have to take. And most of us think that we have to go from point A to point Z,
No,
without realizing, no, it's okay. Like if you show up for yourself today, that's amazing. And if you show up for yourself tomorrow, well, that's amazing. And you show up for yourself the next day, that's amazing. And I think, it's one of the things, Bernadette, like you know me, so you know that I am always preaching about 1% at a time. By the end of the year, you'll be 37% better than you were when you started. So we have to like really think about how is it that we can start to transition our life one moment at a time. And if you're someone who is a person of faith, but maybe you don't read the Bible every day, or you don't have that relationship every day, or whatever, don't beat yourself up about it. Just start one little bit at a time. Like the way I start my day is with complete gratitude. And I literally believe gratitude shifts everything because it has for me, right? So that's my belief system. That's what I believe in, because when I wake up every day realizing that God gave me another day on this planet and another day to be with my loved ones and another day to try something new and another day to experience life, I'm very grateful for that, right? And so when I view that in my lens of gratitude as opposed to my lens of I can't do this, negativity, whatever, I realize that things in my life also start to shift, right? So I really love that you said, now you show up to Bible studies and you want to see who the next friend is. That was just a shift in perspective and in knowing who you are, right? And that you know that you're loved by God, and therefore you're more confident. You get a little bit more bolder when you know that you got somebody who has your back, right? I always think of this. I think it was a video or meme. I don't remember, but I just remember that this guy was standing, and behind him was, I mean, in front of him was like the enemy, and then behind him was Jesus with a shotgun,
love it.
and he's like, touch my child and see what happens, type of thing,
Mhm.
right? And that like puts a smile on my face. Of course, Jesus isn't walking around with a shotgun, but the whole
Hey,
point is that there's an army behind you that loves you, that God has your back, and he has your protection, and he's watching over you. And if we can just understand that, right? So then when somebody rejects us, ouch, it hurts, but that's not mine. You know what I'm saying? I won't make a story out of that, right, Bernadette? Like give it back,
and
right?
I like what you say about the gratitude part. I think what I would like to also add to that is when we're talking about limited beliefs, right? The beliefs that we have about ourselves that are holding us back and keeping us from really stepping into the purpose that God wants us to have, depending on your age, it took you X amount of years of life believing this belief.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate truth is that people think, okay, I'm going to just choose to believe I'm worthy of God's love, right? And while it's biblical truth, our brains, unfortunately, it takes a lot of work. Like we all know
Mm-hmm.
about neuroplasty and the rewiring of neurons in our brain. And it's an easier path to go back to negative thinking, to false lies, than it is to
Mm-hmm.
think positively, right? I was in my 40s when I started challenging a lot of my core beliefs. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a little around 5 years to really get to the place where, like, if that negative thought came up, I immediately went to, no, but this is what the word says. Because before it was, this negative thought came up and I wallowed in it. I,
Yeah.
I, I stewed in it, right? And so we have to know that these core beliefs, they might feel rigid and they might feel like they can't be changed, but that's not true. They can be changed. In the process from going from feeling rejected, having these limited beliefs, to stepping into freedom, it's going to be a process. And we have to respect the fact that we're humans and we're going to
Mm-hmm.
have this tug of war that's going to happen within ourselves. And so it's so important, like, to have practices like gratitude. I'm a big praise person. I feel like the act of praise stops thoughts, it stops the way that you're thinking, it helps you to reshift. Sometimes it takes me a while to get into praise when I'm having the negative thoughts, but once I get there, it breaks up some of those thoughts. And so we have to just give ourselves I would say more along the lines of accept God's grace that it's gonna take us some time to undo what we learned over the course of years, but it's not that it can't be done. We just have to be patient with the process as we're doing it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I wish we would, I wish us as women, especially women who are starting businesses or growing their businesses, would give ourselves more grace. We
Mm,
don't. We think that if we woke up today and we didn't have a million followers and all these things coming through, that we're just not good enough, or what we have isn't worthy, or what we have isn't, and that's not true. It's just not true. And one of the things that happened is that now we're bombarded with AI and all of this technology. And so we are fooling ourselves to thinking that we are as fast as the computer. Our brains have not evolved, y'all. Like we still think the same way in the same, like one thought at a time, one thing at a time, one experience at a time. We all still have all of these things we have to contend with as human beings, right? And so we have to remember that and give ourselves some grace. All of you who are here, who are trying to start businesses or want to start something new, give yourself grace, because you're not going to get it done overnight. And that is okay. It's not supposed to be overnight. It is
mm,
supposed to be a journey, because that's where you're growing and expanding on the actual roller coaster. That's where you're going to grow. So, thank you for that. And another thing I wanted you to touch on, because I know you're the queen of boundaries, right? And so
right.
I wanted to make sure that we are setting healthy boundaries around our lives, around our minds, right? Because as women, it can be very, very challenging. All of the women who are here and are at this event want to serve others. Like they really are coming with this heart of what widget, what podcast, what coaching business can I do right now that'll serve another human being, right? And so we have to really be intentional when it comes to setting healthy boundaries, because that can be a real big challenge for women, because then we want to do everything for everybody and we feel guilty if we don't. Right? So I wanted you to lead us through that and what practical advice that you have in creating and maintaining these healthy boundaries in our life, and that they honor God,
Mm,
right? And that they honor our well-being. And this is why I say that, because when I first started, I thought I had to help everybody.
mm,
Right. And so I was helping everybody for free and just helping, helping, helping. And I was burnt out. And then I felt guilty. This was back in 2000, whatever, 2000, whatever, when I started charging for my services, because I'm like, oh my God, what if they pay me for that? Is that a sin? You know what I mean? So I did not know how to put the boundaries in. It took me some time. I would love you to lead us through that.
yeah, boundaries are my favorite word.
I
You know
know. I
that.
know.
Because I think they're so necessary in order for us to function as women, as business women, as human beings. I think boundaries play such a vital role in healthy relationships, healthy business relationships. Because, growing up, my mother always used to say, you have to know where you begin and somebody else ends, and where somebody else ends and where you begin.
Mm,
Right. So it was like saying, okay, we're two different people. We're two different people with two different perspectives, two different sets of emotions, two different sets of, going back to that mind, the way that we feel, perceive, understand the world. And so if we're not careful and we don't have healthy boundaries in place, we end up overshadowing each other, getting really enmeshed, getting lost in the other person, forgetting who we are. And especially when rejection is a part of our story, it's so easy to get caught up in people pleasing because we don't want to be outcasted. We don't want to be pushed away. So I'm willing to forego all of my boundaries just so you can love me. I'm willing to forego all of my boundaries just so you can approve of me. Right. But what ends up happening is that because we're human, and I think we forget this, we're not all super, we want to put on this trope of being super women, but we're not. We're human. We all have limitations. We all have a capacity in which we can operate without getting burnt out. And for some people, it's larger than others. I know people who, man, they can their whole entire day spend it at hospitals, being there for sick people, dying people, go home, love their loved ones. They can go out into the streets and hear the worst, and still come back and not feel like they're completely exhausted or drained, right? And then there's other people that is like, okay, if I can have one emotional conversation in the day, I met my capacity, right? But they're still showing up, regardless if it's 500 people they're showing up for or one person, they're showing up as fully as they can, in the best way possible to love the people that's in front of them. And we have to respect that everybody's boundaries and limitations and capacities are going to be different. We have to know that for ourselves. Where is that window of tolerance that I can push myself to without getting burnt out? And what I really love about boundaries, and what I always kind of go to, is that a boundary to me, while it's meant to help us be in healthy relationships, a boundary also protects other people from, in little ways, encroaching upon our peace, our joy, right? So that we can also show up fully for God. Because if I'm not honoring my boundaries and spending my prayer time with God, my alone time with God, my Bible reading time with God, and I'm constantly giving it over to everybody else, then I'm burnt out. And He is our true source of fulfillment, right? People are not going to fulfill us the way that God can. So we need to honor those boundaries so that we could be filled up in a way then to love other people. And so we can even, I'm big on the Bible. We can use scripture as a guide. Jesus also set boundaries. He was very clear, let your yes be yes and your no be no, right? Because anything outside of that, I think he said something along the lines of, it comes from the evil one. And, I know that's kind of like hard language to hear, but let's be real about it. If you say yes when you really wanted to say no, you're not showing up authentically. You're showing up out of obligation. And when you show up out of obligation, all you're doing is burning yourself out. And then what ends up happening is you start feeling resentment toward the other person because they should have just known. They shouldn't have asked. But no, did you vocalize that? Did you say that? Were you real with yourself and say no when you needed to say no? Right. And we need to make sure that we're always communicating in love. We don't have to justify every no. Something I kind of share with my clients is like, a no is a complete sentence. We hear that all over social media, but it's one thing to know it. It's another thing to internalize it. And so it's really important that we know that we don't have to justify saying no. We have to know it for ourselves so that way we can say yes to the things that we really have the energy and the capacity to show up for in a full, loving way, and be consistent. Once you set a boundary, it's so easy to go backwards. Remember, our brains go back to what's comfortable. So if you set that boundary and you said, I'm not going to be able to help you today, or something along those lines, and then you end up going back on your word out of obligation, then you're not being consistent in your boundaries, and it makes it harder for people to respect them over time.
Yeah, and a really great practical way to view this too, ladies, is with your business. Set boundaries with your business. I talk about this even in my coaching program, your non-negotiables. Set boundaries, because if you don't have them, you will be burnt out. You're going to be exhausted because you're going to try to help everyone and everybody. And that's okay to help people, but you do have to set your boundaries or you're going to get burnt out. And I mean that because it happened to me. And I had to start saying, okay, what do I want to do here to respect the women in my coaching program and my one-on-ones? How do I want to do this so that they can still have access to me, but that there's boundaries? And you have to set that up. And with all of you who are here, because I know all of you are either starting or growing your businesses. So I want you to think about yourself. I know that we don't want to be selfish, but that's not selfish to care for yourself. That's not selfish. That's another dismantling thing we have to dismantle. Okay. Caring for yourself is not a selfish act. Okay. It actually helps you show up better, because when you can take care of you, you can show up really the way you want to show up. You can really show up authentically. You really show up and step up. I was also thinking about like a job that I hated, right? Like every time I had to go to work, I have to go to work. When you go to work with that kind of attitude, or your business with that kind of attitude, it's 100% true, Bernadette. You don't show up authentically. In fact, you half-ass the whole thing, right? And then you're like, why didn't I get that promotion? You didn't get it because you half-assed the whole thing, right? It's the same thing with your business. Like if you don't show up for your business authentically because you're half-assing it, then don't expect for your clients to become fans. Don't expect for the people who are in your ecosystem to respect what you say. You have got to show up for you, right? And so I love that. And I love all of you who are here. And I know that that's harsh and probably a little forward, but it has to be said because you have to respect yourself and you got to put up those boundaries. Okay. So I really love that you talked about that and now what that means for you to feel healthier and to feel better and to be authentic, right? And the truth is that we are really afraid of rejection. I know a lot of us try to be super women and all hard. I don't care what people say about me, blah, blah, because I know I do that too. But when somebody says something harsh, it still does hurt. There's still a scar there, right? And it doesn't stop me from doing my things, but it still does hurt, right? And rejection leaves those deep scars. Like, and that starts a lot with our childhood. It starts a lot with people we love who didn't accept us the way we thought they should have, right? So what I want you to do is like take us through how we as women can start to begin to heal from all of these past rejections and then replace those wounds, right? With what God's truth is about us and our worth. I would love that.
Yeah, you know what runs through my head is just our emotions and how they show up when we're feeling rejected. Um, I find that what ends up happening is a lot of times when women are struggling with rejection, that core belief of I'm not worthy, I'm not loved, something's wrong with me, um, or maybe like I'm a monster, something along those lines. What ends up happening is that there's a lot of emotion that's fueling those thoughts. And because we experience rejection of our own emotions, we end up rejecting our emotions. And so we immediately go into, again, those people pleasing behaviors, perfectionism, doing the most because we're trying to avoid what we're feeling on the inside. And a lot of my work, I really strongly stand on this. While our emotions are not facts, our feelings are not facts, right? We still have to honor them and we can't minimize them because these things did affect you. They hurt you. And the way that I kind of frame it is if God didn't want us to experience our emotions, he would not have written the book of Psalms, which is the depths of every single human emotion you could think of, from grieving all the way to joy. If he didn't want us to experience our emotions, the book of Lamentation, which is predominantly about grief, wouldn't be in the Bible, right? And so, in order to truly heal, like I tell a lot of my clients, in order to really feel the height of your emotions, like joy, contentment, gratitude, you're going to have to get really comfortable with feeling the depths of the emotion, grief, sadness, anger, right? Because that's going to help you balance out and get you to that place of like, now, because I'm comfortable with my emotion, I can honor it, I can feel it, I can let it give me wisdom to my experience, and then I can know how to move forward. Outside of that, it's just you're just running away from your feelings. And so I really do believe that the first place to start with is acknowledging the pain. That's just facts. And that to me, again, is the hardest part because, again, because we've been rejected, we reject ourselves. And so I personally went through that. I'm a huge, you can see I'm a huge book nerd. I YouTube every podcast, listen to every podcast. I lean into my defense mechanism is leaning into it, intellectualizing everything. I need to understand why. I need to understand how this happened. I need to understand it from different angles, different perspectives. My husband is a detective, so we sit there, we do detective work on situations that happen, right? A retired detective, sorry. But what all of that does is it's just removing me from the feelings. And so it wasn't until when I was really faced up against one of my biggest situations around rejection that I really sat there and said, God, I'm hurting. I'm like really hurting and I'm sad. It's even bringing tears to my eyes. Um, that he was able to meet me in that moment and remind me that he's still there, that he is always going to be with me. And that even if people reject me, he would never, like that's just in his word. He was very consistent. He is who he is. He's never changed, same God yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And that he would always be present for me. And when I had that nestled deep in my heart, it was easier for me to move forward because he gave me what I needed to be able to go back to, okay, now I can start experiencing joy. Now I can move past the pain of rejection.
That is so good. I recently went through, I'm still going through it. I think I'm still grieving it, is a separation of a friendship that I've had for over 20 years, right? And it's because I'm growing, I'm expanding. I'm like you, I'm a detective. I like to dig in and find out what's going on. And so that has changed me in some ways. And so old friendships and stuff are starting to now get affected because I'm growing and I'm not the same person I used to be. And I don't want to be the same person I used to be. I want to be the new version of me, whatever God is guiding me to be. But when you talked about, when you start to feel that deep rejection about putting God's word into it, that helps me because I've cried a little bit already. I've gone through the hurt and the heartache of what it means to lose a beautiful friendship of 20 something years. You know what I'm saying? And it's still hard. And sometimes you just have to be you, vulnerable, authentic, a mess, and just come to God as the mess that you are, because we all are a mess. And that's okay. There's a lot of message in your mess, a lot of message, right? And so I love that you guided us through all of this, and I wanted the women to have an opportunity to ask you a question, to jive with you a little bit, talk to you a bit. So I wanted to like open the floor up to any of you who'd like to unmic and let Bernadette know what you feel, what you think, a question on any of the topics, rejection, on boundaries. I mean, she's really an expert in this. This is what she does. So if you guys have a question, I'd love to hear, yeah, I'd love to hear your voices instead of just mine. Anybody want to unmic? No? Nobody?
Well, can I jump in?
Oh, there you go, Farah. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Bernadette, you go, and then we're gonna let Farah ask you a
No,
question.
I
Go
just
ahead.
want to say, like, in terms of all of this, I just really want us to, like, again, just well, because we're human, we have to accept that all of this is just a human experience. We're human beings having human experiences. And as we're going through this transition of letting go of these false core beliefs that are holding us back from stepping into God's purpose, there's going to be a lot of moments that are going to be awkward. There's going to be a
Yeah.
lot of moments where we're going to feel like we fumble, right? And it's going to feel so easy to just sink back into old thoughts. Like, I don't remember how many times I was up against rejection and battling that what's wrong with me thought that it felt like the easiest thing for me to do was I just need to go back to old behaviors. This is not working. Let me just go back
Yeah.
to people pleasing. Let me just go back to giving the other person what they wanted. But there was a huge part of me, and I at this point say this is the Holy Spirit inside of me that was like, no, absolutely not, right? And so I had to sit with the uncomfortableness of, I'm not going to do this textbook. I'm not going to be perfect at this. I'm not going to say the right things all the time. Sometimes my emotions are going to get in the way. I'm going
Yeah.
to say something that could be hurtful. I myself might reject somebody else with my words, right? But when I started accepting this as just part of the process, it started to become more comfortable. And what ended up happening is that what will happen is you'll just feel more anchored in yourself. And with time and with practice, these things become easier. Now I'm at a place where I do feel more comfortable and I'm saying, hey, that was really hurtful. Can we talk about that? As opposed to like yesteryear, I'd be like, you hurt my feelings. Who the heck do you think you are? Like
Right, right, right.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I really stand on, we have to accept the fact that we're human.
Yeah.
God knows this about ourselves. This is why he gives us grace, right? And as long as we come back with that repentance and that willingness to want to learn and do better, he
Yeah.
will give us the wisdom that we need to be able to press forward. So that's all I wanted to just add.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Farah, would you like to? I know that you had your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I usually come from a place of rejection because it's just happened so many times that now it's just like I'm in the mindset where it's like, okay, I expect it. So if it happens, then I'm good. But if not, then it's like, okay, we can really be friends now. Because it's kind of like, in my experience, it's always just like when I meet people, it's not like rejection like right away. It's always like I find out later on. So now I'm just like, okay, it's gonna happen anyway, but I'm still gonna show up as myself. I'm still gonna, be who I am. And if you reject me, then, I'm good. If not, then it's okay. So I kind of come from that place now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I think one of the things that I didn't get a chance to highlight on is it's like literally in the Bible. Like Jesus even said that we are going to, like, rejection is just a part of life, right? Um, but what's interesting is what you said is like you accept it now, but I'm sure it took you some time to get there. It took you some experiences to get there, right? But that doesn't stop you for showing up as the person who God called you to be. And if we can understand that rejection is a part of life, then we don't personalize it as much. We don't carry that offense as much. I again grew up in a household where it was like we had to like everybody and everyone had to like us. So rejection wasn't a conversation that we like. I didn't grow up. Nobody told me about like, oh no, people are gonna not like you and that's okay. So when I married my husband, and I give him credit, 100%, this was all him. We were raising our kids, and he would tell our children, "You're not for everybody, and everybody's not for you." And at the time, I'm like, I'm a grown adult and I'm listening to him and I'm like, what does that mean? What? How dare you, right? Like, no, we had to be friends with everybody. But, I gave him, he's dad, I gave him the space to lead. And fast forward, I see the benefits of that in my children because they don't allow, like, yeah, they experience rejection too. They talk about it, they're upset about it, but they press on, they move forward, right? And so when we can accept that this is a part of life, like you said, I think it just gives us another layer of freedom. And then again, if we don't hold on to the offense, then what I also believe can happen is we will carry this authenticity within us that people will be drawn to that. And then, there will be situations where we won't be rejected because people are like, wow, you're a pretty cool person. I like you. Let's be friends, right? So yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Here's another thing, if I can intervene a little bit, Farah. I want you to start removing the thought that it's going to probably happen anyway thought.
Mhm.
Okay, that rejection of it's going to happen anyway, all that kind of stuff. Don't do that anymore. Okay, you walk in with who you are, knowing that you're a child of God and that you're walking in. Rejection or not is irrelevant. Let God take care of that. But I want you to start working on that language and how you say that to yourself. Because you mentioned, well, they're probably going to reject me anyway, or when I walk in, it's going to probably happen. So don't do that anymore to yourself at all. Like if people reject you, they're rejecting themselves out of your life. It has nothing to do with you. They're excusing themselves out of your life, right? There's a Leona giving me the thumbs up. That's right. I love it. I love it. So I just want you to know that, okay? So just know that within yourself, like when you walk the room, present yourself as a child of God and just walk in. Whatever people think or do is none of your business. You know what I'm saying? Like that's one thing I had to really learn as I was growing too. I mean, I'm 52 and I'm still trying to get stuff together, right? And the truth is when I realized that it was none of my business what you think of me, that actually helped me to step into who I really am. Now, people either love me or hate me, like me or don't. Honestly, I don't care, but I do care about the people who care about me. I don't focus on the people who don't. Does that make sense? Okay. So I just want you to watch that language, okay, Farrell, because I like you. I've always liked you. Right. And so that means that not everyone rejects you. And so don't think that anymore because that's not true. Right. And what happens is that when our brain sees that something happens and then something else happens, it reinforces it as if it was a truth, even though it started as a lie. Right. So it's like one of those things like when somebody lies to you and then they have to have another lie to cover the first lie and then a third lie to cover the next lie. That's what our brain does, right? If we already started with the premise of a lie, everything else is going to show evidence of the lie and then it reinforces the lie. But it's not true. So like Bernadette was telling us, going down to that root and dismantling that because it is not true, right? And so the evidence that you see, like people reject you and you've seen it a couple of times, that's actually not true. They're rejecting themselves out of your life. That got nothing to do with you, right? And so the first premise of that went to your head and told you about rejection, I want you to get to that root. Because once you rip out the weeds, you can grow the flower bed, right? You can grow the fruit. So anyway, those are my 2 cents. Bernadette's like, go ahead, Bernadette, go ahead. I
No,
can see
I agree with everything you're saying. It's
your
true. It's
lips are
true.
moving. Like I got
It's
something to say.
true. It is. It's so true. It's so true. I think the reality is that a lot of times, and this is something that I also speak to a lot, is that we have to also, and this is hard because it's not excusing the behavior of other people, it's just understanding their behaviors, right? And a lot of times when other people reject us, it's because really they're not connected to themselves. Rejection is the opposite of connection, right? And so if somebody rejects you, it's because there's a part of them that's uncomfortable with their feelings. There's a part
Right.
of them that's uncomfortable with their whatever it is that's going on inside of them. So it has more to do with what's happening within their own world, within their mind, within their perspective, than it does about you. And I like what you said. I also got to that place of like, if they reject me, that's on them. I had to get to a place where I was like, listen, unless you verbally, with your words, tell me to my face that there's something that I did that upset you or that is pushing you away from me, I don't know. I'm not a mind reader. Right. And I think that's a huge part about rejection is that it forces us to like feel like we have to read people's minds, when in actuality, unless they use their words, you really don't know. So
Right.
I
So
like that you say that.
yeah, thank you for that. Leona, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, sorry, girls, I'm driving, so
No,
I'm
you're
trying
good.
to pay attention. But yeah, I always say it's a them problem, not a me problem,
Right.
first of all. It's a mirror, it's a projection, right? So you can either be a positive projection for someone or a negative, and a lot of times if they're rejecting you, it's a negative, they're putting out a projection upon you. So perception is projection. You know, you can perceive that as however you want it to be, but you can make a choice to make it a positive, saying, well, thank you for rejecting me because you're probably not in my highest and best. And as a theta healer, you know, we go into the root and we cut out those limiting beliefs. And normally it happens from the ages of 0 to 7 that starts to actually create those patterns. And like you said, they create neural pathways in our brain, these ruts that
Yep.
keep reinforcing it. And so we have to cut those energetic cords and those ties and those words and get to our unconscious mind to actually get those positive things. Like, what did you want to have instead? And that needs to be instilled. And then thank the people that did that, because you learned a lesson about yourself. There's resilience that you learned. There's perseverance. There's showing up authentically, right? So take the lessons that those people gave you. And then, you know, it starts off with, yes, accepting that you might not have known better before. Forgive yourself for allowing them to affect your energy and the past. And then now put that positive projection out there and be, I'm so grateful and thankful that that happened to me because I've learned this, this, and this about myself. And now I get to move forward with those lessons and my power and my authentic voice to be able to move forward with it, you know? And
Yeah.
so kind of putting everything together that we just talked about, words have power, right? So choosing our words wisely, you know, giving the right power and then giving the power back to ourselves. You know, don't allow those people to take the power away from you, because when you allow them to affect your energy, that's when we start going down that rabbit hole that we don't want to go into. So pull your power back, claim your words, and make sure that you understand it's a them problem, not a you thing, and thank them for all the lessons that you learned from the experience.
Like that, you know, we hear it a lot. Rejection is God's redirection, right?
Yeah.
And I was in church the other day, and it was a hard pill for me to swallow, but even the pastor said that we need to be grateful for the experiences that we had of being rejected, because those were the experiences that propelled us into whatever mission that we're stepping into, right?
Yeah.
And what that looks like is different for everybody. It might be writing a book, it might be doing public speaking, it might even be breaking generational patterns that, you know, you need to show up differently for your children. But when you have those experiences of being rejected, honestly, what ends up happening is it forces you to look at yourself, look at how you show up, understand the root of the lie that maybe you experience, and then, you know, just kind of redirect it and reshift your focus and perspective into what is it that God is trying to teach you in this moment.
Yeah.
So I really
So
like what
good.
she said. Yeah, no, that
Yeah,
was
me too.
good.
So good. Barbara, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw your hand go. Okay, I'm Mike. You come up on
I want to
stage.
thank you, Bernadette, because this is a topic I think we all need to be. I'm going to be re-listening to this because I think we all have this and we all need to work through it. But I'm real big when I coach on the I am affirmations. So, like you said, Nina, we've got to watch how we talk to ourselves. It's so important. But my number one I am statement is I am empowered by rejection.
Mm-hmm.
Been really, really powerful for me, but I want to move to the boundaries because that was my problem. The oldest of 6 children, and devoted my entire 60 years, 55 years to my family, my husband, my marriage, my children, And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, who the hell am I?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it all had to start with those boundaries because I never had boundaries in place. So I appreciate that you addressed that because that was my biggest hurdle. And that was the mass exit of who I thought were my friends.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the, I like that because one of the sayings that I'm big on like sayings and words and books and I've heard that a person who doesn't respect your boundaries didn't respect you at all, right? And
Yeah.
so because of, and like you said, and I think that's like the older daughter syndrome that they talk about, eldest daughter syndrome, like your whole life you're being told like you have to put everybody else's needs before your own. And so the same way that you got comfortable with it, so did the other people. And so when you start putting up boundaries in place, what ends up happening is that they don't know what this is. This is uncomfortable to them too, right? And you might see that they throw adult sized fits or, little tantrums to try to get you to go back to old behavior. But
Yeah.
when we remain persistent and consistent in keeping those boundaries, you're really going to start seeing who shows up for you and who doesn't show up for you. And then I think what ends up happening is over time, to me, I think those healthy relationships, especially the ones that stick around through all the muck, those are the ones that also help you build up that confidence. Oh, this is, to really know who you are within the context of your relationships, but even more so in the context of who God called you to be. So I like that you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Anybody else before we start wrapping up a little bit here? I want to give you guys some of the links of stuff and I want everybody good? Okay. Okay. Bernadette, I would like you to share with them what you have for them and also how they can, contact you if they want to speak to you further about this, anything like that. So share that.
Okay. So you can find me on Threads and Instagram. I'm under at refresh_grace. Email is hello@refreshgrace.com. I do one-on-one coaching. I'm working on the back end about doing maybe some intensives around boundaries specifically. But really, I just enjoy what I do. So I'm here. I'm ready to help. I'm ready to help women step into their freedom, into their calling. I am a total cheerleader. I get excited over your small wins. So if you set one boundary today, I'm like, yes, we did an amazing thing. And I just love being a part of people's healing and watching them just grow into, like, we say over and over, who God has called you to be. I strongly, strongly believe in community. I do believe that we were made to be in relationship with God, but we were also made to be in relationship with people. And so it is, while He heals us internally, people build us up, they encourage us, they keep us going. And so I think it's really important that, we have these coaching programs. Like Nina has really got me out of my muck when I was going through some stuff and my rejection was kicking up in business. And so I'm just really, really grateful for this opportunity, and I'm here when you guys need me.
Awesome. Thank you for everything today. This was so powerful and so good. Like, I'm not surprised. But I really thank you for that and hanging out with us. So the few things I have for you ladies today as we wrap up is, well, I'll put here in the chat. I have a special that I did just for this event on forgiveness. I have I took $200 off, so you guys can go check that out if you like. And that is a full course. It has like 7 videos, workbook and everything to help you get through forgiveness and release all of that toxicity, right? Because a lot of us are holding on to stuff we didn't even know we were holding on to. I didn't even know I was holding on to unforgiveness of my first grade teacher when she called me stupid. I was very, almost all my life until I was like in my 30s, every time I did something that I didn't like, I would go, gosh, you're so stupid. And it wasn't until I started to dig into the root that I realized where that came from. And so the other thing is, there's stuff on my shop. So I think I gave you the shop link. I hope I did. Yes, I did. On the shop link, if you go there, you'll see I have She Means Business, which is an ebook, and I also have a master class on shame. So unshaming yourself, so to bring in abundance. That's also in there, and it's free. That one's free. The Unshame Yourself is free. The ebook is also free. So, and as we're talking, because throughout the weeks, I'm adding more and more value to that link, which is the shop link. Okay. For Magic Bookifier, if you guys are interested, I'm going to give you that link because I think it's just it's an amazing deal. I have to give it to you. Give me a second. Let me give you this link for those of you who want to create ebooks or books or anything like that to put out your expertise or what it is that you're doing in the world. This is a great system. I've been using it, like I said, and it's been phenomenal to use. So there you go. It's in there. You can click on that and check it out if you like. It's an exclusive deal just for people who are here, just for the people in this event for Straight Talk. So I thought that was pretty awesome. And also, if you guys want to have a free AI book, he was also kind enough to do that as well. So I can actually give you that in a second. If you guys want to know more about AI and how AI is for all of us, this is the link for that and some codes that you can use for that as well. So, I'm always giving a lot of things. I know, like yesterday, I gave out so many links of so many things. So I just like to give value as much as I possibly can. I just want to give more value and more value. Here's a couple more codes in case those other codes don't work for you guys. So if you guys want to screenshot it or take the links, you more than happy to have you do that. Okay. So we are going to be wrapping up, and I think, let me make sure I just gave you everything I was supposed to give you today. Hold on. Yes. Okay. So we are now, I want you to keep an eye on your emails or on your texts, because you're going to have an amazing amount of videos coming your way with phenomenal content, like phenomenal content, stuff with like learning content that converts, learning how to do like funnel building, learning how to do, like, there's just so much stuff coming at you with all these 6 and 7 figure earners who have come to really just pour into you all of this amazing stuff. So don't miss those videos because they are impactful. I was talking to Dominique. Oh, Dominique has her hand up. Dom, I didn't even see that. I'm sorry. Come on to stage.
That's okay. I was wanting to just say this was an awesome session. It really has my brain thinking because I like what Bernadette said about first of all, like going through rejection kind of puts you into your power. I forgot how she worded it, but that happened to me. I was a volleyball player in high school and I was trying to get recruited for college. And, although I did have, I ended up getting a full ride scholarship, there was a lot of rejection in between there. And it really, not only did it kind of have me second guessing, like my skills, like everything that I believed in up until that point, but it turned me into an amazing coach to, especially to those who are shorter and, weren't blessed with 6'2" height, and how to get them to still be recruited and, all that good stuff. So I did go through that a lot. But I did also want to comment on the boundaries part, because that's something that I'm currently going through. I'm a new mom, and I've set pretty strong boundaries prior to me being a mom. And then I feel like now that those boundaries were set, there was really no need for additional at the time. And so now that there's need for additional boundaries, I kind of feel like back in that space of like, man, like I don't want to come across rude or I don't want to come across mean. But at the same time, like these boundaries definitely need to be put and set in stone. So anyway, I appreciate this conversation because it reassured me that, first of all, boundaries are not negative. They're absolutely needed. And it's the reason why my relationships are thriving to this point, because boundaries needed to be set. I think I have like a little bit of like a people pleaser mentality a little bit. And I like to nurture and things like that. And so it's a constant conflict in my brain. But no, I just wanted to say I appreciate this conversation. It's everything I needed to hear.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's the thing with boundaries. We all think that they're like one and dones. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, set it and we're good for life. But the reality is that our lives are always evolving, always changing, always becoming something new. There's always a new season that we're stepping into. And so boundaries have to match where we're at. I'm on the end of being what I call a 2/3 empty nester. Like two of my 3 kids have moved out. So now my boundaries look different, right? Now, because supposedly I have more time on my hands, so I can be more available to people. And I have to be very clear, like, no, I'm still human with limitations and I only have so much energy. I am older. I'm not my young 20-year-old self that I was like all over the place, right? So we have to respect that our seasons always change, and especially when you have a new baby, like you need to show up fully for your baby first and foremost, right? So it's like, what do you need to do to protect your energy so that you can be present for your child in a way that is beneficial to her first and foremost? But yeah, you're right. Also, while still being kind and loving to people, because we don't want boundaries to be like this thing where we're like, "You're out of my life. That's it," right? Like we want to. It has to be some ebb and flow and some negotiation. So I'm grateful you shared that.
Can you lead her like maybe into like one thing she can start right now for her newfound boundary setting? Because she has a child now, right? So she's trying
Mhm.
to set boundaries around what's done around her child, how do you speak around her child, what you do around, like that kind of stuff, right? So I'm just wondering if you can give her like a step one.
Step one is knowing what's important to you, right?
Mm,
We have to know the why behind the boundary that we're setting. What was important to me for this is so silly. It's really silly, but this is me. When my children were younger, what was important to me was that they had nice shoes, nice clothing, right? That we took care of there because I wanted what you look good, you feel good. My mother is a little bit of a free spirit, and one time she took my kids to a stream where there was water and their brand new shoes, right? And so I had to like kind of explain to my mom, like, why is the boundary important to me? Like, I'm not materialistic, but I do value the things that we take care of and I want them to last long. So if you want to take them to the stream, then let me go buy them cheap shoes, right? Let me go buy them something. And so that was a healthy negotiation. And I think it really boils down to like, what is important to you and why it's important. And then from there, you could speak to the actual boundary.
that's good.
I
Did
love
that?
that. I have
Okay.
just a quick part. I know we're supposed to be wrapping up. I'm so sorry.
No,
Uh,
no, no. No, we're here as long as we need to be. Go ahead.
my part two to that question is okay. So you know what you want, why you want it,
Mhm.
and someone is not respecting that boundary. What would your advice be for that?
This is the hard part, right? It's the consequence. That's the hardest part of a boundary because a lot of times you can, depending on your relationship with the person, you could just say, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z, or I'm asking for X, Y, and Z because this is why it's important to me. And that person be like, okay, I got it, no questions asked, right? But if the person doesn't respect why it's important to you, then at that point we have to get a little bit more stern, I guess is the word with the boundary, and really look at what is the consequence that's going to be in place and verbalize that consequence. So one thing that I do, like for example, my caregiver clients, when they're caring for their parent and here comes a sibling, being the peanut gallery and saying, you're not doing this right and something's wrong with you, whatever, the consequences when we talk about mom or dad's treatment, if you speak to me this way, I will no longer continue the conversation. I will come back when you calm down, or when not when you calm down, but I'll come back when it's calmer, right? And then you have to act on that consequence because people are not going to take it seriously if you just say it as a half kind of like wishy-washy request and then don't follow up with it. And that's where we had to sit with the anxiety. That's where we had to sit with the uncomfortableness. But this is why, again, it's so important for you to know your why more so than any other person. So that way you can continue to follow up on that boundary and the consequence.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and that's not easy. I mean, that's a difficult thing to do. If it's with a spouse, if it's with a child, if it's with, someone who lives in your home, if it's, very good, your mom, your whatever. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is necessary. It is necessary because if you don't set the boundaries now, they get worse later because now they're all up in your boundaries, like all up in your space, right? And so setting boundaries is important and also doing it well is important. And that's a delicate balance. And sometimes you're going to try and it's not going to work. And sometimes you're going to try and it's going to be a great hit. Here's the thing too. I think sometimes an outside perspective can be very helpful when you're setting boundaries. So for instance, Bernadette does that with her clients, right? And so maybe you need a coach, a therapist, or somebody who's an expert in this to kind of help you navigate that. Because doing it sometimes alone, we can get hurt or defensive or offended. Right. So we can do all those things. I know for me anyway, like when I had to set boundaries with like say my kids or set boundaries with my husband, it's so freaking uncomfortable. but it has to happen. Otherwise, I'm gonna like hate you. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm all up in my, a space that I didn't want you in this area of emotion, whatever that is. And so, respect yourself first and your boundaries and know why you want to do this. And then I fully recommend that you do it and that you find a way that works for everyone, right? It's not easy, especially if it's your child or your spouse or your mom or your dad or something like that. So go ahead, Bernadette.
And just one more tiny thing, release yourself from needing their permission to set your boundary.
Yeah.
Because that's what people pleasing does. It really ties us to, I need their permission, I need their approval, I
Mm,
need their validation in order for my boundary to be valuable and respected. And we have to break away from that mindset.
that's
You don't
good.
need anybody's permission or approval to set whatever boundary that you need to that protects your peace and especially that of your child.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm a big believer, like we want to come up loving, we don't want to be mean about it, we don't want to be like condescending, but at the end of the day, you don't need their permission.
So good. I remember when when Dominique first had the baby, it was a very strict and very good boundary of do not kiss my child on the face. Like, do not kiss my child on the head. Like, don't do that. Right. And she kept that boundary. And I love that. And even though we are like family, we love the baby, whatever, we respected that. Right. So we would kiss the leg or we would kiss the clothing or we would kiss whatever or just air kiss. Right. But the whole point is we respected the boundary because she set the boundary, right? Because sometimes people have a tendency to just go all in you and to touch your child and want to kiss all over your baby. And you're like, what? Get off my baby, right? I mean, I remember that when my kids were little, people were just like intrusive, It's kind of like when a woman is pregnant and everybody wants to rub your belly and you're like, dude. Like, what are you doing rubbing my belly? I don't even know you, Right? Exactly. Right? What are you doing? But that's the point. Like, you know how to set them because you've set them before. And so it's just a matter of navigating how you want to set these boundaries because you deserve to set them. You deserve that. You should because it's going to make you feel better. It's going to make your environment feel better. Whatever the boundary is that you're trying to set. So I encourage you to pray on that, look at and see what boundary it is you want to set, and then just set it. And people are going to kick and scream and whine about it, and they're going to, like, oh my God, my world is coming to an end because you set a boundary, and they'll get through it because once they realize you mean it, they're going to have to fall in line, and that's just how it is. So thank you so much for that, Dominique. Thank you for asking that. I appreciate you. So ladies, this was a really great interactive session. Like, I really love this. Holy crap, this was amazing. Bernadette, you have to come back,
Absolutely.
and I would love you to come to because we're going to be doing an event again every quarter. We're going to be doing this big event. So, and I want you to be a part of that because that was really, really good. So ladies, remember to follow her at refreshed_grace. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am. On
Refreshed
Threads
Grace.
and Instagram.
Okay, great. Yeah, because she's big on threads. I don't know threads. I keep telling her she has to teach me because I don't know how to do it. But she's big on threads and on Instagram. So definitely follow her there. And I'm really grateful for you. And I'm grateful for you taking the time to do this. And for those of you who have any questions or anything, make sure that you email her. You can email me at info@ninaperez.com and try to get back to you as soon as I can. I'm having a little bit of issues with my emails, which I'm gonna talk to Bluehost right now because I'm ticked. But other than that, you guys have the link now for Magic Bookifier. You have the link to my shop, so you can go get the free masterclass about shame and abundance. You also have the code that you need if you want to get the forgiveness course. Okay, and that's a 7-video course with a workbook and everything. It was super helpful. It helped me transform a lot of things in my life. And so I made it into a program. So you have access to that. The code on that, I think, is Women 2025, and it'll give you $200 off. Okay. So if you want that, go grab it. And then I think that's pretty much it. Yesterday, for those of you who weren't on here, and then you have the codes for the free AI book too. That was so kind of Magic Bookifier to give you that for free. Yesterday, I gave certain things. I don't want to give it to you now if you don't want it. So what I gave yesterday was time boxing workbook, which some of you have already. If you don't have it and you want it, I'll give you the link right now. That's a time boxing. You want it? Okay. let me grab that for you. It's a Canva, so you can make as many copies of it as you want. You can even, make it your own brand and share it with your clients if you want. So there it is. It's time boxing. It's what's helped me keep myself in order and organized. And then I also gave away a bunch of templates. Did you guys get that? Okay, let me give you that one as well. This one is templates of ebooks, guides, lead magnets, all that kind of stuff. It's all the templates you can use on Canva. Okay. So you can take that one too. I gave you guys so much yesterday. And then I think all of you, because all of you have been following me for a little bit, you all got the two-path meditation, right? The two-path meditation. Yes? Okay. I believe you all have it. Two-path meditation. Barbara, I think I shared that with you back in the 5-day faith-filled challenge. Okay, so you should have that. And that's what I gave away yesterday. Then on day one, I had given away the wisdom ebook, right? The one that has all of the steps on how to create your own coaching business. So I shared that one too. And for some of you, you're already in my programs, you have a lot of this stuff, but I'm more than happy to share it again if you need me to. And I think that is it. Now, we are going to be live again on I think Monday. So we're going to be live again on Monday, and we're going to go through, content and how we bring people into our ecosystem and all that great stuff. And so we'll do that on Monday. And I don't know if there's any more lives this week because my schedule is cray cray. So make sure you guys are looking at your emails every day and your text messages, because those are where all of the videos are going to live that you need for that day. And if there's a live, it'll say live and you'll know because it'll be a Zoom link. Okay. And that'll be for you to come back into the space. But it will definitely be, from what I know, I'm going to be here every Monday until the 17th. And that's because I want to make sure that any questions you have about the videos that you've seen, any speaker that you want to connect with, on any of that kind of stuff, I want to make sure I'm here to help you access that. Okay. So thank you, ladies, for being here. I love you so much. I love you so much. Bernadette, why don't you stay for a few minutes? I just want to get a debrief from you. And all of you, thank you so much for being here. And, if you guys have it in your heart and mind and you want to let me know how this event has been for you, I would love to hear that. The good, the bad, and the ugly, all of it, right? Because like I told Bernadette when we first started, this is something I am testing. I've never done a hybrid event before, and I don't know how people feel about getting videos versus live versus the timing, all that kind of stuff, okay? So I would love that feedback. So if you guys can email me some feedback and let me know, that would be phenomenal. Otherwise, I am here when you need me, and I will see you all hopefully Monday. And if there's anything sooner, just keep an eye on that, okay? Thank you guys for being here. Have a good one.